Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Kazakhstan is voting in its first parliamentary election under a sweeping new constitution, potentially completing a major transformation of the country's political system. Yet questions remain over genuine competition, presidential succession, and Kazakhstan's increasingly delicate balancing act between Russia, China, and the West. Joining us today on TVP World to assess what this election tells us about Kazakhstan's political direction is Peter Zalmayev, Director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Pleasure to be with you.
So we see Kazakhstan changing its constitution and abolished the old parliament and created an entirely new Kurultai system. But has it actually changed its political system?
In essence, it doesn't. Of course, Tokayev came to power under a slogan of essentially trying to break up with part with the past, the authoritarian past of his predecessor, Mr. Nazarbayev. In essence, the regime has remained the same. It's far short of a totalitarian regime, and yet to call it democratic would be definitely a stretch of imagination. And this election that we are now discussing that would essentially do away with the bicameral parliament in favor of a single body parliament is a step in the wrong direction. I believe that if you look at how it's been done, how it's been pushed through and essentially down people's throats in Kazakhstan, and how the media has been essentially neutralized and neutered, I would actually say, when it comes to covering this process, tells a lot about how I think Tokayev feels that there's simply not enough leverage on the part of Kazakhstan's international partners to push for any significant democratic transformation of the country. The two countries with the most leverage, Russia in Kazakhstan and China, of course, are not concerned about any democratization such as we understand it, free and fair elections and a responsible government and a president that can be elected and re-elected in a fair and transparent process. None of it is, of course, of much interest to Kazakhstan or to Russia. The United States, of course, has lost a lot of its leverage that it had, starting with 2001 and September 11, and some of the relationships we saw go to a different level between Washington and some of these Central Asian countries. So I think it's just more of the same we're seeing. But it also tells you that Tokayev feels that he's now ready to be his own Nazarbayev. And I think within a few years, we'll see a return pretty much like full circle to the authoritarianism that we saw under his predecessor.
Right, but something that's quite interesting is how there's been a report of a very high turnout rate at around 72%. Does that not give the system a legitimacy, given that it's much higher than previous parliamentary elections?
Well, I believe that when you talk about post-Soviet states, from Russia to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, etc., turnout is a very, very questionable figure, right? It can be achieved by essentially, putting people in a bus and driving them to the voting booth, or it's essentially fabricating the figures. We'll just have to wait and hear from OSCE or DIR, the election monitoring branch of the OSCE organization, just to see what exactly happened. I think it's too early, too soon to talk about this. Granted that, of course, Kazakhstan is not even Turkmenistan, nowhere close to its Central Asian neighbor. That's a very totalitarian system. I think that these events that happen in Kazakhstan, there, the participation is heavily encouraged by the government to be able to then look at the high number of the turnout and claim any sort of legitimacy for what the government is proposing.
Now, you mentioned earlier that this is taking a step towards a different or a wrong direction. Do you think that this single parliamentary system is actually going away from a separation of power? Is it essentially a way to kind of consolidate its power?
By all accounts, it makes it a much more of a, at least potentially, a rubber stamp body than the bicameral parliament ever was. Even, and you have to admit that even in the last few years, I mean, at least during the entirety of Tokayev's reign, the parliament has been pretty pliant, right? It's not made any mark on the body politic of Kazakhstan as a body that's served as an effective check on Tokayev's power, on Tokayev's indecision when it comes to the war between Russia and Ukraine, how on the one hand he talks the good talk and is neutral when it comes to the war and has in fact encouraged Vladimir Putin to wrap it up quickly. That's to be commended. On the other hand, he's allowed his own entrepreneurs to continue to engage with the Russian regime. There's now information that ERG, the major industrial conglomerate, has been buying iron ore from Kazakhstan that's been put on hold. It's been selling iron ore to Russia, and this just became known, and it could potentially blow up as a major scandal. Of course, Kazakhstan has turned into a veritable kind of offshore zone and a financial haven for Russian businesses, etc. So that's, of course, very concerning. But above and beyond, I think this measure, this process that we're seeing, this transformation of the Kazakh parliament serves one very simple function that goes beyond any sort of legitimacy of the legislative body, and that is, in fact, to wipe the slate clean and allow Mr. Tokayev to run again and stay president until at least 2036. So it resets the clock. I mean, we've seen this trick time and again throughout the former Soviet area, Lukashenko, and of course, Mr. Putin himself. So this is par for the course. We're seeing more of the same with Mr. Tokayev, who seems set to remain president for life.
Right, so now the picture is a little bit clearer when it comes to this election going around. You mentioned Kazakhstan's relationship with Russia, and that's something that I want to explore a little bit as well, because back in 2022, when they're facing potentially like political upheaval, Russia is the country that bailed them out. But fast forward to today, they actually refuse to endorse Moscow's territorial claim towards Ukraine. What's the relation between Kazakhstan and Russia right now?
I mean, listen, this is a very, I think, low barrier, right, to overcome. I mean, even China, that is an active supporter of Russia in this war, has not officially recognized Russia's territorial acquisitions. So this is, of course, logical, considering that Kazakhstan has its own potential fifth column inside its country, and I'm talking about the entire north of Kazakhstan that is Russian speakers. And Putin has dropped hints here and there that, if push came to shove, he would have to make sure that the Russian-speaking population of northern Kazakhstan is properly defended. So you can make your own conjecture what he meant. I would not rule it out that, Tokayev has regular nightmares about the appearance of a North Kazakhstan People's Democratic Republic, so to speak. So Vladimir Putin knows that he has that leverage with Tokayev. Tokayev, once again, he will talk the good talk. He might actually genuinely and sincerely want this war to wrap up. This war has presented difficulties for the Kazakh oil sector that gets exported and shipped through the Russian territory and then on to the port of Novorossiysk, which has been a target of Ukrainian drones. But to actually do anything and such as, cut off all business dealings with Russia, stop being essentially a haven for Russians to avoid sanctions using Kazakh businesses, credit cards, etc. I don't think he's willing to do that, not just for economic reasons, but once again, because he knows that Vladimir Putin has him on a hook.
Right. Do you think there's a chance that Tokayev might start leaning more on China as an alternative, seeing that they do offer investment, the different transport corridors, and even counterweight to Russia without demanding the democratic reform that the West does?
Well, it's a difficult situation, and it's the curse of geography, as as a known expression goes. The curse of Kazakhstan's geography is, of course, its borders with, on the one hand, China, on the other hand, Russia. So whatever I said about critical about Tokayev, you still have to take it with a grain of salt, understanding how precarious its position is. It's a huge landmass sandwiched between two authoritarian states, and one of them, such as China, is way more populated, of course, than Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, for that landmass, which I think is fifth or sixth in the world, it only has just about 20 million people, if that. That is significant. So Tokayev is playing this multi sort of vector game. He wants to be all things to all people, like Apostle Paul used to say. But at the end of the day, everyone will come out just a little bit, come off the dealings with Kazakhstan, just a little unhappy because Tokayev, once again, is kind of boxed in. He feels that he is, and so he's doing what he can. I'm trying to sort of see the situation from his own viewpoint. I, as a Ukrainian American, of course, and I want to see Kazakhstan assume a much more proactive position when it comes to Russia's aggression against Ukraine. But once again, what is the incentive for him to do that? The U.S. has taken a very hands-off approach about that, even though we have these new sanctions in Congress that seek to punish parties dealing, with Russian oil, etc. It's not clear how it will affect Kazakhstan. If they actually start acting, that will be, I think, the greatest incentive for Tokayev to start cutting off economic relations with Russia in favor of all other parties that are available.
Right. In the meantime, of course, we'll have to see how this election turns out. And thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you.
Cheers. And thank you for tuning in to this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.